Founded in 1989 with a mission to provide a welcoming space where people of all sexual orientations, gender identities, and expressions and cultures can find support and unconditional acceptance, Affirmations was found in the Detroit area, and we're pleased to be joined now by Executive Director Dave Garcia. Dave, thank you for being with us today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. Good morning.
Appreciate having you on. So let's start off with some of the new initiatives through Affirmations, including their new LMSW, or Licensed Master Social Worker. When did the decision come forth to pursue bringing in an LMSW, and how are their services going to be put to use to help LGBTQ plus people in our local area?
Sure, that's a good question. Affirmations has always had a behavioral health program. We've partnered with universities across the state. They send their master's level students, graduate students to us to get practicum hours. They see our community on a sliding scale, and then those cases are reviewed by a licensed LMSW. However, that has some drawbacks. Those students, they're only here for 4 or 5 months, and then they're gone, and they can't see youth. And certainly during COVID, the amount of folks calling us to get mental health help rose dramatically. And so we were able to secure some funding. And in fact, today was the first day that our LMSW is on staff. And her name is Zoe, will be able to see anyone in the community, young people all the way through our seniors. And also we hope to have group therapy. We have a number of parents who will call us and they're seeking therapy because they have a child who is coming out or transitioning. And it'd be nice to get those parents into a group together and be able to have some group therapy sessions as well. So from youth to group therapy to our seniors, we also have learned a lot over COVID with teletherapy and reaching into the homes of people all over the state and region. And so there was an obvious need. We had continued to refer out to our partners that we trust. And we just thought, hey, we should be doing this ourselves and getting paneled with different insurance companies like Blue Cross Blue Shield and others, and maybe even having at least a net profit for the organization as we move forward and expand mental health services. So that's kind of how it all came about. We learned a lot through COVID, and today is her first day, and we're glad to have her on staff.
Yeah, and it's a huge asset for an organization that's providing so much help to people in the local LGBTQ plus community, especially those mental health services. That it's a lot different than what it's been in the past, focusing on mental health, and it's certainly a huge aspect of providing a stable and a happy life for people in a community that still to this day continues to be marginalized, not only in our local area and in the state of Michigan, but across the U.S. and around the world. So Dave, on that note, with this service now being available through Affirmations, how can people that are in the LGBTQ plus community themselves, as well as parents and family and friends that would also be seeking some of those group therapy options, how can they get involved and get access to that care through your LMSW?
Well, the easiest way is just to call Affirmations if they're seeking an appointment, but they can also go to our website at goaffirmations.org and receive information that way as well. Those are probably the two best ways to get more involved. Outside of LMSW, you may have heard that the Ringwald Theater, which was a local theater here in Ferndale, Michigan for many, many years, they lost their space during COVID, and they've moved into Affirmations. And we've renovated our entire community room, which is a large glass room in the center of our 17,000 square foot building here on 9 Mile. And they're going to be having, they moved in. We have a whole new theater now with lights and curtains and sound and audio. And so their season starts in October. In addition, we have the MCCD Church, which is a progressive denomination out of Detroit. And they will be having their church services. They've moved their church services to Affirmations every Sunday. I think that is important. Although I myself am a proud atheist, it's important that the community center is being used by everybody. And particularly now, when I say over and over again that the religious exemption is the greatest threat to the LGBTQ community since HIV/AIDS, and we see religious exemption laws popping up all over the state and all over the country, where people are legally able to justify their prejudice and discrimination against our community as long as they hide behind their religion. And so people continue to tell me that this is only about wedding cakes and wedding photographers, and that is simply not the case. In fact, there's a doctor recently in Detroit, a pediatrician, refusing to treat a baby because that baby's parents were lesbians, and they weren't fined, they weren't fired, as long as they used their so-called religious beliefs as their defense. And so we are seeing the religious discrimination happening, especially in primary care and in mental health, as we discussed, across the state and country. And so I believe Affirmations has a responsibility to fight back. And part of that is lifting up the voices of those Christian, any denomination, but particularly the Christian faiths who are progressive and allies to the LGBTQ community.
Yeah, it's important to, in the case of the Ringwald Theater Partnership, to have those outlets for expression for people of all communities, but especially in marginalized communities such as the LGBTQ plus community, and to have religious outlets too, because ultimately it doesn't matter what demographic you're in. For a lot of people, their faith is an important part of their life, and when they're being shut out of their faith because of who they simply are, having another outlet, having a place that they can go and still practice that faith with people that actually hold to the values that are present in that faith, and having other people to have that support system. It's an added support system, and it's some sort of normalcy to life that is brought back for these people that otherwise are having that, unfortunately and disgustingly, shut out of their lives simply because they are being who they are.
Right. Recently just a couple months ago, we had the protesters out front of Affirmations with their signs of, God hates you and you're going to burn in hell, and faggot this and faggot that. And so we can't get them off of a public sidewalk. But while they were here, we raised $10,000 from the community responding to folks with those signs out front. So for reasons like that, we also want to lift up those denominations who are not condemning us to eternal life in hell. Many of the executive directors of the LGBT centers across the state, we belong to what's called the Michigan Community Centers Network. We recently received, all of us executives received a threatening letter in the mail, some sent directly to the homes of these executive directors. Again, condemning us to hell, eternal damnation, you'll burn in hell, all this message. And so we have a responsibility to fight back against that messaging and to, again, lift the voices of those in the faith community who are fair-minded and are not discriminating and justifying that with their religion.
It's simply just people that want to be able to live their lives and live a normal life like anybody else would be allowed to, despite being who they are. And in this case, they're not being allowed to. Instead, they're being marginalized. They're being pushed out. And it's not just on the religious front, and it's not just on the medical care front. It's really across the board. There's a really interesting statistic from the Kent County Community Health Needs Assessment of 2020 that found that 32% of LGBTQ plus adults are more likely to experience material hardship, that's like affording food, housing, or medical care, compared to 24% of straight and or cisgender adults. And so those disparities still very much exist in our society, just in general. I mean, we've heard over the year, we've heard a number of stories over the years, and we continue to hear about how tough it is for lesbian and gay couples to adopt a child even. Something that is a hallmark of life, raising a family, is difficult simply because they are, for lack of a better term, different than the social norms, when really it's just two people that are in love wanting to start a family.
Exactly. And to your point, I think there's this misconception that the gay community has a bunch of disposable income. And the reality is the LGBTQ community is much poorer than their counterparts in the straight world. In fact, during COVID, we started a food program out of the back of Affirmations where you could just drive up, pop your trunk, and get a box of food or clothes or whatever you needed. To date, since COVID, we've handed out well over 5,500 meals. In fact, when those guys, so-called Christians with their signs out front, were protesting the center, we were in the back handing out food. I told them, why don't you put your signs down and come help us hand out food to the community? We don't ask if someone's gay or straight when they come up behind Affirmations to get food. We're just trying to help the community. But they weren't interested in putting those signs down and helping us. That wasn't their goal that day. And so we have seen throughout COVID especially, as you said, the desperate need from the LGBTQ community for mental health care and also for basic supplies like food and clothes and showers. We have a shower at Affirmations, and I can't tell you how many times someone will come in off the street in need of clothes and simply a shower. And although we do big important work like the LMSW that we talked about, we're about to announce $1 million grant to the organization to help get vaccination rates up in the LGBTQ community across the entire state of Michigan. Those are very important things, but no more or less important than someone that walks in off the street in need of a shower.
We're joined by Dave Garcia. He is the Executive Director of Affirmations, joining us on the MegaCast. Learn more information about Affirmations, including how you can provide support to the organization and resources that may help you if you are in the LGBTQ plus community or have a family member, a friend, an acquaintance that may need some assistance to navigate a still ridiculously discriminatory world that we live in. That is all at goaffirmations.org, and you can and they are also back to their regular hours of operations Monday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 9 p.m. At 290 West 9 Mile Road in Ferndale. Dave, as we continue to talk about the discriminatory nature of so many different aspects of our world here in Michigan, and that expands out even further beyond that into the region, into the country and beyond. What more can be done right now? What assistance is really needed by the LGBTQ plus community from allies in the community to help continue to sow change in our local area, but also at the state level and ultimately at the federal level? Because as we continue forward, we continue to see a lot of the discriminatory actions that have been snuffed out of our society or have begun to be changed for the better start to be trending backwards again, and we need as many people as possible to prevent those situations from turning back to the past.
Yeah, well, you have to get involved. I mean, we tell our straight allies, not just our straight allies, but everyone in the LGBTQ community and our allies, you've got to get more involved. And that includes, you maybe come volunteer at Affirmations. We're always looking for volunteers. That's an example. I often ask my straight friends and family members, most of us have giving portfolios that we're giving to charitable organizations. I don't just give to Affirmations. I give to, the ACLU and the Sierra Club and others that are near and dear to my heart. Well, we often ask our straight allies, in your giving portfolio, is there even one LGBTQ organization are you giving to in a charitable way? If not, why not? And so at a time when we need your help so desperately and are being attacked on many different fronts across the country, and we could go on, we're talking about people that we're trying to help get into our country because if they go back to their home countries, they could be killed or imprisoned. And so immigration is an LGBTQ issue. And so is climate change. And so, the one reason why the LGBTQ community has made such progress, in my opinion, is because we are everywhere. We're in every family. We're in every denomination. We're in the Latino families, like myself, my own family, Latino family, the African-American families, straight, conservative families, progressive families. And that's why it's so important for our community to come out. But when we do come out, we need your support, straight ally support. And the straight community is going to be one of the biggest keys to the success of our movement, and which is simply asking for fairness and equality and to be treated the same as everybody else. But it's going to take a lot more straight voices. It is still legal to deny LGBT people public housing and public accommodation in the state of Michigan. Why is that? Well, because the Republicans won't even allow for a hearing to amend Elliott Larson in Lansing. So it's not even allowed to get a hearing, much less a vote on the floor. So get involved. And if you care about fairness and equality for the LGBTQ community, come volunteer, donate, and fight for equality for all people.
Yeah, your donations matter, your voices matter, and they all go toward productivity and moving progress forward in our society, whether that be changing laws that are archaic and frankly stupid and should still be in place, or simply providing the means that help organizations like Affirmations then provide programs that not circumvent, but serve as an alternative to these traditional programs that simply are not being made available to people in our community that need access to this care, to these resources. So we appreciate having you on, Dave. Another minute before we'll say goodbye today. Anything else that would be important for people to know at this time about affirmations or any of the work that the organization is doing or issues that are important to it?
You know, unfortunately, we just had to announce today that we have to postpone our Black Tie event, which is our largest special events fundraiser every year. We just can't do it in the fall. The computer modeling looks horrible with the Delta variant. And, you know, anytime you have an indoor black tie event and people, their masks are going to be off with hors d'oeuvres and wine and sit down dinners. And so for the safety of our community, we had to postpone. That's a big hit to revenue. So anything that folks can do out there to help support your local community centers and LGBT centers is so vitally important right now. Imagine trying to run a community center during a pandemic. There's no books on it. There's no one to talk to. We're just doing the best we can. And if you can help us in any way get through some of this, it's greatly appreciated.
And again, all that information, goaffirmations.org. Dave, thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much.